Namaste. I welcome all of you to the ATHARVA Forum. It has been a privilege for me to be part of it today, where we will discuss something which is hard to me, the temples and the history. We are going to discuss about the 4 great Chola temples in a series. So this will be the first of the sessions where we will talk about the greatest of all temples built by Cholas, the Thanjavur Brihadeeswara Temple. Subsequently, we will cover the 3 other great temples in a series of sessions. I would request you to subscribe to ATHARVA Forum to just ensure that you don't miss any of these sessions. Temple building is one of the key areas in the medieval era, especially in Tamil Nadu. When we see the Cholas who came to power right about 8th and 9th centuries, that is a period where there is a huge change in terms of the temple building. It is not that the temples were not there before. Right from Sangam days, we have seen a lot of temples in Tamil Nadu. They were basically built with sand, with wood, with some metals as well. As Mahendra Pallava, who sort of initiated the rock cut temple era during the Pallava stage, mentioned in his Mandagapattu inscription that there were temples before him, which is made up of sand, wood, and metal, and then he started doing as a rock cut temple. So during the 6th to 8th centuries, basically you will see a number of rock cut temples built in Tamil Nadu by Pallavas and Pandyas. But it was actually the Cholas who ushered a new change in terms of the temple building by changing most of the earlier temples, which are built by sand, into the stone-based temples or the granite-based temples, which called as Katrali. Katrali means Kal Tali. Kal is basically the stone, and Tali is basically the temple. So that is where a huge change in the temple building activity took place in Tamil Nadu. Adithya Chola, who is the first among the medieval Cholas, is credited with building a number of temples along the banks of the river Kaveri on both sides, right from Sahyadri up to the Delta region. And there were, during the Bhakti movement, there were about 274 Shaiva temples, which were sung by the Nayanmars, of which about 190 are there in the Chola country itself that time. So that gives you an idea about the number of temples built by Cholas all along. But this is basically the early Chola region. But when we come to the Rajaraja, who sort of got into the throne during 1985 AD, he actually made a huge change in terms of the temple building of Cholas, then started building huge temples. And the first among it is basically the Tanjavur Brihadeeshwara Temple, which is what we will see now. Before we get into the temple and look at the architecture and other stuff, we will have a look at a brief history about Rajaraja, which I think many of you are aware. Rajaraja is one of the greatest kings who ruled the southern region during the medieval era. He is perhaps the greatest Chola king, as many historians attribute. He was under the tutelage of his uncle, Uttama Chola, for a brief time, and then got into the throne. He started expanding his kingdom. He won over the Cheras, then he defeated the kings in Sri Lanka, moved and then defeated the Chalukyas who are in the northern region. So literally most of the South India was under his control. So while he was winning it, he is also a very ardent devotee of Shiva. And then probably seeing a number of small temples built by his ancestors, he wanted to build something bigger. The inspiration came not from his ancestor, but from a Pallava era temple in Kanchipuram, the Kanchi Kailasanathan temple. He calls that as Kachi Metral, Kachipattu Metral. So he wanted to build something in similar way, but something bigger, something in a bigger scale. So in right about 1003 AD, he started building the temple and then completed it by 1010 AD. So right about 7 years, which took for building this mammoth temple. Now, coming to the history, none of us know that this temple was indeed built by King Rajaraja. So there were a lot of Puranic texts which were sort of created during the Nayak and Maharashtra rulers who were ruling Tanjavur at that time, which basically says that this temple was built by some Kirimikanda Karigal Chola due to some curse. And then he came to Thanjavur and then he wanted to build this temple. So there was a lot of Puranic legends which are associated. So everybody believed that this was built by somebody else. Then G. Pope sort of mentioned that this was built by some Kaduveti Chola. So it was totally obscure that who actually built this temple. Then it was a German archaeologist named Hulsch who went and then deciphered the inscriptions in the temple and then finally told that this was built by a king called as Rajaraja. Then during 1892, there was a gentleman by name Venkaya who was also an archaeologist who confirmed that this was indeed built by a king called as Rajaraja. And then he in fact gave the entire inscription line which says that Pantiya Kulasani Valanattu Tanjavur Putrathu Tanjavuril Nam Edipitta Tirukattali Sri Rajaraji Chiram. That's what he went and told, that this was built by a king called as Rajaraja, and none of the other legends were true. Multiple archaeological surveys took place in the temple, and a lot of inscription got unearthed. And that is where we came to know about the basic history behind this big temple. Now, if you look at the region, the Chola country, which is basically surrounded in the delta of the Kaveri, there are a number of rivers, rivulets, canals, which makes the entire soil fertile, but at the same time very soft. So building such a temple requires a lot of engineering ability. So Rajaraja, in fact, chosen one of the greatest sculptor or architects during that time, Kunjaramallan Perunthachan, and then handed over the responsibility of building the temple. So I think they have chosen a place which is relatively strong or hard enough to hold such a huge weight of the temple, which is somewhere near the Vadavaru, where the current temple is located. So they have started building the temple, but the other challenge seems to be to bring the granites, because while the Chola country is very fertile, there was no small hillocks or wherever they can bring the granites. They were outside the country. But to bring it from the north or the western side, they have to cross the river, the Kaveri and their tributaries. So it was a tough chance. So they have actually chosen a place south of Tanjavur, the place called as Brihadeeswara Kovil, from where the granite rocks were taken and then the temple building activity started. So there were a lot of research went in, and then finally the historians now agree that the granites that indeed came from the Brihadeeswara temple. The other major challenge is to get the people who are supposed to build the temple. So he has to seek help of everyone where he has conquered, like people from Pandyas, people from the northern Tamil Nadu regions, and even people from the Chalukya regions. And it was not a very easy task to bring all of them and then put them into this particular task. Now let us take a bird's eye view of how the temple is structured. If you look at from the top, you will see a rectangular structure based on, the entire temple is actually based on that. But what we need to also understand that not everything is built by Rajaraja. There were a lot of additions which came during the later time. So as we speak, we will know what is the difference. What are the structures built by Rajaraja and what were the later day additions. Now, when you enter the temple, you will see Gopura, which is called as Keralanthagan Tiruvayil. The Keralanthagan Tiruvayil is basically a 5-story Gopura. if you look at the temples built before that time, you will not see such a big Gopuram, which is basically there in the entrance. So this is one of the many firsts which Rajaraja undertook, where you will see a Gopuram of this size just when you are entering a temple. And later, the Pandyas or the Nayaks or Marathas, they have actually taken the clue and then built bigger Gopuras. So that and all are there came after this particular temple. But this is a pioneer in terms of having such a Gopura. There are many sculptures of many gods which are there in the Gopuram. Shiva, Ganapati, Murugan. And one of the important aspect is the Dwarapalakas, which are there in the Keralanthagan Vail. And why it is called as Keralanthagan Vail? Because Rajaraja considers that his victory among the Cheras, who are ruling the Kerala at that time, were one of the biggest. He is actually taking pride of it. His Meikirti, in fact, starts with Gandalur Chalai Kalamarthu, which is denoting a victory of the Cholas over the Cheras. So he actually took a lot of pride in terms of winning over the Keralas and then called this Gopura as a Keralanthagan Tiruvai. And then it has one of the important Murti, which is called as Sadashiva Murti. Now, Rajaraja is a follower of the Pashupatha sect of Shaivism. His guru, Isana Sivacharya, is one of the gurus of the Lagulisa Pashupatha sect. So, he has put very specifically the Pashupatha Murti in the entrance itself to very clearly prove or tell everyone that he is a follower of Pashupatha. Now, once we cross the Keralanthaga Vail or the Keralanthaga gate, I would say, immediately you will get into the next gate, which is called as Rajarajan Tiruvasai. The Rajarajan Tiruvasai also has a Gopuram. Now, this is a bit smaller compared to the earlier one. This is a 3-story Gopuram. Here also, there are number of sculptures of various murtis which are there in the Gopuram. And what you will see now is one of the important architectural aspect of a Dwarapalaka, which is very unique in this particular region. To denote the kind of godliness, how big is the god, the Dwarapalaka itself stands as a testimony. You will see an elephant being swallowed by a snake at the bottom. Now, a Dwarapalaka puts his leg on the snake. So, you will know that elephant is how big. And if a snake is swallowing it, how big is the snake? And then a Dwarapalaka who is actually standing on top of it, a huge Dwarapalaka, you will see how big is he. And then he says with the mudra, saying that the God inside is beyond imagination. So, which means how big is the God? You can't even imagine. So, this is one of the symbolic representation of the godliness, which one will encounter before even entering into the Brihadeeswara temple. So, that is there in the Rajarajan Tiruvasai. The Rajarajan Tiruvasai, beneath that, the wall has a number of Puranic episodes which are sculpted beautifully. You will see the marriage of Shiva and Parvati over there. Then there is this Chandigeswara's legacy or a legend which is there in the Periya Puranam. Kannappa Nayanar's legend as there in the Periya Puranam. Those are all sculpted beautifully in the wall beneath the Rajaraja. Rajarajan Tiruvasai also has a beautiful Murugan Murti over there, which was sung by Arunagirinathar, who came later during the 13th century. Tanjai Managarathu Rajagopurathu Amartha Perumale, the person who seats on the Rajagopuram of the Tanjavur big temple. That's what Arunagirinathar says in his Tirupugal. But so that is one of the important murtis which one we will have to pray before moving further into the temple. These two are the main gates one would enter the temple with, but there are other gates on the other 4 sides. And the north side gate, which is called as Anukkan Vail, is another important gate because That is the gate in which Rajaraja from his palace will come to the big temple. How do we know that? The Ashtamankala symbols, which are basically the Purna Kumpas, the lamps, everything is there in the temple, and it is in the gate itself. And it was not like sculpted with vigrahas or murtis, but it is a royal gate. The moment you see it, you will know that it is a royal gate, and it is sort of architected in the Kerala style. But most of those top portions of the gate is now gone, but you will still see those beautiful crafted sculptures in the Anukkan Vail, through which Rajaraja used to come and then pray to the Brihadeeswara. And this is how the overall outside structure of the Brihadeeswara temple is there. And another thing is the entire wall is called as Tiruchutru Maligai. Now, why this is called as Tiruchutru Maligai or not as a Madil, which is a wall in Tamil, is because it was consists of a mandap which goes all along the boundary. And if you look at that, now we will see the first story of it completely. The second story is not there in many places. It is broken or destroyed by the invaders. But by seeing that, we will know that there was a second story which was existing, which is no longer there. You can see it in the picture itself. So this was built by the commander of Rajaraja, known as Krishnan Raman. And then the inscription very clearly says the entire boundary, which is called as Tiruchutru Maligai, is built by the Krishnan Raman. This entire, the Tiruchutru Maligai or the wall, as I said, has a mandap which goes all along. And there are about 36 Parivaralaya deities which were there in the various mandaps, which is surrounding the entire temple. This is one of the unique features of this temple. But if you go and see there, you will not see many of those deities because they were either destroyed or taken out. And many of those mandaps and the top portion which has the Sikhara are all broken now. But we will see the remains of many of those there. And we can deduce that those were all flourishing during the Rajaraja's time. And some of those involved the Ashtadik Balakas. So each of those Ashtadik Balakas like Isana, Viruti, Agni, were all there in the in those various mandaps. Sabda Matrikas, Brahmi, Varati, Kaumari. So there were shrines for all those Sabda Matrikas, but now what we see is only the shrine of Varati. You will not see the rest of those Sabda Matrika shrine at all when you enter into the temple. As soon as you go inside, you will see a big mandap called as Nandi Mandap. Basically, in most of the Shivalayas, you will see a Nandi. Here also, you will see a huge Nandi, but that was not made by Rajaraja. It was a later day addition during the Nayak era. But the Nandi which was there earlier, that was there besides the Varahi temple. You can see that even now. This is there in the picture. This was the Nandi which was given by Rajaraja to the temple. If you go further, the very structure of the temple is in the way of Madakoil. Madakoil is where you have to keep on climbing the stairs and then to reach the sanctum. This is precisely how even the Tanjavur temple is modeled. So you will see an Ardha Mandapa, you will see a Mukha Mandapa, and then you will get into a sanctum. You have to cross those mandaps to reach the sanctum of the big temple. It is about 30 square meter, the entire sanctum. And then you will have a wall, inner wall and outer wall. And there is a space in between these two. That is how a sanctum is constructed in big temple. This is again another unique feature which you will not see in many of those Chola temples. And what is there in the path which is there out between the inner and outer wall? We will see a number of murals of Cholas. Later day, there are a lot of additions of Nayak murals over that, but archaeology department has sort of separated both. And there were brilliant paintings which is there when we go through the circumambulating the entire prakara over there. but that particular place is not no for anybody who can go and see it. Now there are a lot of restrictions, but that is a brilliant place where anybody who is interested to look at those noodles can go and see it. Above that, there is another story which is there, and all the way up you will see the Sri Vimana. So the way the entire sanctum and the Sri Vimana is constructed is, the Shivalinga is at the center, and above it you will see only an empty space all the way up to Shikara. This is a method which is very unique again, conceived by Rajaraja and his guru, and there is a reason to that which we will see it as we move along. The Shivalinga, which is there in the center, is very big, and that is the reason why it is called as Peruvudaiyar Temple or a Brihadeeswara. Rajaraja has given this name of the temple as Rajarajeshwaram because his name is Rajaraja. So the temple's name in the inscription you will see as Rajarajeshwaram, which is a bit of a change between the actual grammatically correct Rajarajeshwaram. But later day, because the lingam is big, the temple is big, people started calling that as a big temple or a Peruvudaiyar Kovil, and that name stayed. Sri Vimana is having about 13 stories. So as like a pyramid, it keeps on reducing the circumference till it reaches the Shikara. Now on the top of it, you will see a Thirivam, which is there on a square floor, and above it you will see a Shikara, and then there is a Kalasam which is there on top of the Shikara, and that is how the entire Sri Vimana is constructed. Like I said, that inside you will see only an empty space. Now above the linga they have put a small wooden structure just to close that open space, but that was not there during Rajaraja's time. If you stand near the linga and then look up, you will see empty space all the way above the Shikara. Now on the top of that square floor, which is right about 8 meters inside, four sides, you will see two Nandis which were there, and the Shikara, and then the Kalasa is right on top of it. Now there are a lot of myths associated with Shikara, which we will see as we move along. If you look at the Linga, the Shivalinga has a petam 5 feet in height. Normally, if you look at a typical Shivalingam, you will see a square on the bottom, an 8-faced structure in the middle, and a cylinder in the top. That is 3 different parts of a Shivalingam, which you will see in most of the temples here. The one below is called as the Brahma Bhagam. The one in the middle, which is having about 8 faces, are called as Vishnu Bhagam, and the one on the top, which is cylindrical, is called as the Rudra Bhagam. This is the 3-tiered Shivalinga you will see in many of those temples. But in Tanjavur, you will see the top one has a number of structures. Like, so if you go from below, you will see a Brahma Bhagam, then there is a Vishnu Bhagam, as I said, then there is Rudra, Maheswara, Sadashiva, Parabindu, Paranadam, Parasakti, and then Parasivan, and then above that, vacuum. So this is basically constructed based on an agama called as Magudagama. Magudagama is one of the agamas in the 28 Shaiva Agamas, 17, and then there are not many temples which follows this particular agama. As we know, Cholas were devotees of Lord Nataraja in Chidambaram, and Chidambaram in fact follows Magudagama. Along with, there is another temple in Tiruvarur which also follows Magudagama. So this is perhaps the third temple which follows this particular specific agama. And there were references in the Brihadeeswara Mahatmyam, the Puranic text associated with the temple, along with Tanjai Peruvudaiyar Ula, which clearly says that this particular temple is following Magudagama. There is a Tamil poetry which says that Adisaivar Needu Magudagamathil Aatathil Odisayvil Seipusai Utkundu, saying that the Sivacharyas who are performing the puja are basically doing it based on Magudagama. So That is the reason you will see 9 structured Sivalinga, which is there in the temple. Is the height of the Sivalinga is about 13 feet. Some of that which has gone into the Pita itself. So when the Sivacharyas do Archana, they will put 9 flowers, denoting that there are 9 parts, and the top part is space. In Chidambara also, you will see that there is something called the Chidambara Rahasya. Besides Nataraja, the Sivacharyas or the Dikshadas will remove the screen and then show that it is nothing but the space. The God is there in the space. He is omnipresent. And that is exactly the philosophy followed by Rajaraja in Tanjavur also, that for a normal human being, it will be very abstract to understand the space construct of a God. So he will start with the lingam, slowly moves in the top and then all the way to the space. That's the philosophy behind this particular Thanjavur Brihadeeswara temple. And that is how the Sivalinga is there. And the another thing we have to know is, normally in a temple, the sanctum is constructed, and then finally the murti is taken into, and then the pradikshina is done. But in Tanjavur, it looks like it is done the other way around, because of the manmutness of the linga, which cannot get into this particular structure. People believe, or the historians also believe, that the linga was there first. The pradishta of the linga was done first, and then the surrounding structures, including the Sri Vimana, was constructed. And even the pujas are happening to the linga while the construction is happening, people say. So that is very special about the linga of Brihadeeswara temple. So when we see the structures which is constructed by Rajaraja, we talked about the Parivaralaya, most of which are now gone. The Varahi temple is still there. The sanctum, which has the Peruvudaiyar, is still there. And then there is the Chandigeswara temple, which is there besides the main shrine. So this is basically what was constructed during Rajaraja's time. Now, there was a temple for the Amman, which was there on the left-hand side. But now, that shrine was not there, but was replaced by another big shrine constructed by the Pandya king. So there was an inscription saying that the Pandyas constructed that Kamakotam during the 13th century. And then there was a Ganapati shrine constructed by Sri Sarboji. And then there was a Murugan shrine which was constructed by the Vijayanagara. So these were all later day additions, which was added to the big temple. Now, there are a number of beautiful sculptures in the koshta of the big temple. You will see a Ganapati, Gajalakshmi, Gangadhara, Bhikshadana, and a number of Shivamurtis if you go around the prakara. But even if you go on the top, you will see many of the forms of Shiva is there in all along in all 13 stories of the Sri Vimana. And the second story, we talked about the inner prakara, which is called a Sandara. There are a lot of murals there. Now on the second story of it, the 108 Karanas of Nataraja were sort of made by the sculptors. Now of which only 81 are completed. The 27, there are spaces, there were even having stones on which they are supposed to sort of sculpt these remaining Karanas, but for some reason they were not there. So what we see is 81 beautiful poses of Nataraja in the Bharadas Natya Sastra's 108 Karanas. You will see it when you go around. So all this very clearly pointed out that Rajaraja was a great devotee of Nataraja. And then in the philosophy of Magutagama, or the Agama of Magutagama, which actually denotes the space, the bigger space where the God exists, he wanted to symbolize the entire temple in the same line, And then that's why he constructed a number of Nataraja Murtis. Apart from that, in the top you will see the 5 mukhas of Rudra or Shiva, which are Tatpurusha, Vamadeva, Satyojada, Agora, and then Isana. So there were Murtis for each of those faces, which were there in the Vimana also, which again points out to the Sadashiva Murti, who has these 5 faces, and then linking to the Pashupatha sect where he belonged to. So this is basically the way the entire temple is designed, and today it is still a living temple where a number of devotees go and then pray to Lord Brihadeeshwara. The other important aspect of this majestic temple is King Rajaraja didn't just construct the temple, consecrate it, and then just left it. He has ensured that the temple sustain for hundreds of years to come. So for perpetual income to the temple, he has donated a number of things, which is inscribed in the temple itself in about 25 inscriptions. There are inscriptions by his son Rajendra, then there are inscriptions by Pandyas, then there are inscriptions by Nayaks, Marathas, etc. on the years to come. But it was Rajendra who actually put the base of all this by putting about 25 inscriptions in the temple, which talks about what sort of donations he has made to the temple so that it can sustain for years to come. Now, the notable feature of this and a sort of unprecedented thing, what he has done is, in the other kings who have sort of built such temples in Tamil Nadu, you can see prominently the king's name appear. Even though there are officials who donated something to the temples, it is normal that they start with putting the name of the king in the inscriptions. But what Rajaraja has done is, while he has put his name in the donations which he made, he has also ensured that not only his name is there in the inscription, but all others who have donated for the temple is very prominently mentioned. In fact, the first of the inscriptions which he starts, he says that Nam Kuduttanavum, Nam Akkan Kuduttanavum, Nam Pendugal Kuduttanavum, Kodupar Kuduttanavum. He starts with that, which means that the donations I made, the donations my sister Kundavai made, the donations which is made by my wives. Apart from that, the donations made by everyone in my kingdom need to be inscribed in the Sri Vimana. Sri Vimana is one of the sacred places in the temple. So he had put that as his order that all such donations need to be inscribed in the Sri Vimana. Some of those inscriptions is what we will see now. But I think we need to sort of remember the kind of heart the king has to ensure that everybody who has participated in this phenomenal activity gets a place in the history, which is what we are seeing even now after, say, thousands of years of this temple being constructed. Let us start with some of the inscriptions and then see what sort of donations the king and his wives and his sister and others have made. All the inscriptions starts with a Sasana Sloka, which basically says that this is my order. This is my order by which this particular donation has been made. So that has been a customary for the king to sort of put it in all the inscription. The first of the inscriptions, as you see, is the donation of the Shikara, the Kalasa, which you see on the top of the Shikara. So that is made up of copper, and that is what he has donated first. It's like an auspicious start to the temple donations. That was made on the 25th year of the king's reign. That's what is being inscribed. From that, we can get a clear idea of when the consecration of the temple has happened. It happened in year 1010 CE. So that is the first of the inscription to start with. After that, he has recorded all the bronze sculptures or vigrahas or murtis, whichever way you want to call it, which he made, his wives made,
and his sister and others made and donated to the temple. So he starts with the murtis. There are a number of murtis which King Rajaraja has donated to the temple. That's what the first inscription says. So which includes the Kshetrabala, Mahavishnu. There are about 8 to 9 Ganapati Vigrahas. Then he made the Subramanya Deva, Dakshina Murti, and Chandrasekhara Deva, Tanjai Vidanga. So there are a number of bronzes which he made and then donated to the temple. So that's he starts with that. Then he actually lists down the number of Vigrahas made by his sister. There is always this reference of his sister Kundavai playing a prominent role in the kingdom. And this inscription, in fact, sort of corroborates with that theory, because after him, he has given the prominence to his elder sister, Kundavai. So what Kundavai has donated to the temple? She has donated the Uma Parameshwari Vigraha, a Nadaraja Vigraha, and then Punmalikai Tunjina Devar. That was another Murti which she had made. And Dakshina Meru Vidangar is basically the Uma Maheswara Murti, again, which is donated by his sister. And then comes the Vigrahas or Murtis donated by his wives. It's a customary for kings of that time to have a number of wives, so there are no surprises, but each of them have donated one thing or other, which includes Volahamadevi. She is in fact the first of the queens. She donated a Bhikshandavar Tirumurti. Then Sholamadevi donated a Nadaraja and a number of Vigrahas. Then comes Abhimanavalli. She donated the Linga Purana Devar. Then Trilokya Madhavi donated Kalyana Sundara. And then Tanjavan Mahadevi donated a Tanjai Alagar Murti. And then Prithvi Mahadevi donated the Sri Kanda Murti. Then Lada Mahadevi donated a Pashupatha Murti. So like that, there are a number of Murtis donated by his wives. And then he lists down a number of Murtis donated by his official. So the list goes on and on. So this is one of the first of the inscriptions which I think Rajaraja made to put the number of Vigrahas donated by him as well as his wives and the officials. Then he starts recording all the jewels donated by him as well as the others. And there are about 400, 500 kilograms of jewels, which includes gold, gems, etc., donated in the form of various jewelry to various murtis in the temple. So that has been recorded in those inscriptions by the king. So that comes in the next of the inscription. And again, the third part is the land which is donated to the temple. So there are a number of villages which is being donated. So there is one part where he donated the jewels, etc. And then for getting the income, the Rajaraja donated a number of villages to the temple. From there, the taxes collected is given to the temple as a revenue. So that is the third inscription, which talks about how many villages or gramas donated to the temple. There are about 14 villages which is donated across his rule. It is not only near the Tanjavur, but even as far as Sri Lanka and in the Tondai Nadu, which is present day north of the Tamil Nadu. Even villages from there has been donated to the temple. And then from there, the taxes has been collected and given to the temple for that income. So that is another prominent thing which we need to do it. Then there is one more inscription, which is very important to note, where he establishes a treasury in the temple itself to manage this income. So it is not that the income comes and then 1 or 2 persons are there to collect and then give it, but he had ensured that there is a treasury which is being given in the temple itself, which actually there are treasurers who are appointed by the king, and then they manage the entire income. They are supposed to submit the accounts to the king once in a while. So that is the other inscription which is there in the temple itself. There are about 4 bandaris and 170 brahmachari manis. The manis are basically the accountants who are appointed by the king to manage the accounts of the temple. 170 is the number from which we can understand the kind of accounts, the details of the accounts which are maintained in the temple and the kind of income the temple is getting. Now, there is another inscription which is worth mentioning, which is perhaps the longest of the inscription in the Tanjai Periya Kovil. That is called as Talicheri inscription. Now, what does that has? The Talicheri inscription has about 400 dancers who are brought from various parts of the country to perform various activities for Brihadeeswara. Now, these are not only people who performs dances while there are processions of the murtis, but they do a lot of work for the temple, including cleaning, including making garlands, and then supporting the people who are working on the temple on various activities. And there were some sort of sculptors who are making the karanas, the dance karanas according to the Bharat Muni Shastra. So ensuring that that is actually being correctly done because they know the dance. So there are about 400 of them who have been brought from various parts of the country. And when by various parts means they were already working in multiple temples, and then they were sort of brought in for performing for the Tanjai Periya Kovil. So what is remarkable about this inscription is it lists down all the 400 names. It also lists down, they have been given some quarters near the temple itself on the 3 directions of the temple, which is basically Tirku Talicheri, Vadakku Talicheri, the south part, the north part, and then there is the other prominent part. This is like a quarters, which we typically see it given to the government employees currently. So this is being given to these 400 people. Each of the house numbers are recorded. And then what is the donation? Because they need to have some income. So what is that which is being given in lieu of money, basically the paddy or whatever. So that is also being recorded. But it is not only these 400 people, right? So for them, there may be people who are performing Natuangam, assisting their dancing, people who are singing while they are dancing. So those kind of people are also being called and then made to work along with them. Their names are also being listed. Who are they? What is their duty? What they do in the temple? Everything sort of gets recorded in the same inscription. And people who actually sing in Tamil, people who are singing in Sanskrit, those names and what is the sort of income which is given to them. So with the minute detail, the kind of numbers we are talking about goes up to say 600, 700 people for which houses have been allotted, their details are given, their income details of how much need to be given to each of them. Even that is being very clearly recorded in this Talicheri inscription. So today, it is one of the very prominent inscription in the temple. And I would request anybody who goes to that, please do visit this inscription, which is there in the northern part. There are people who actually perform the pujas, the Sivacharyas. So the names of the Sivacharyas and what is that we have to give it to them for doing their duty. That is being recorded. The other major movement during Rajaraja's time is singing of the Tamil Tirumurais. In fact, Rajaraja was called as Tirumurai Kanda Cholan because he ensured that the Tirumurais have been taken out from the Chidambaram temple where they have been kept in a custody and then properly sort of documented by Saint Nambiyandar Nambi. That is why he was called as a Tirumurai Kanda Chola. So these are all basically the Tevaram and Tiruvasakam Padhikam, which are Shaiva canons. And he had appointed about 40 Oduvars, who are basically, they are called as Pidaras, 48 Pidaras, who are appointed to sing these Tevaram and Tiruvasakam, the Shaiva canons, at various points of time in the temple. So their names, and then when they are supposed to sing these, everything is being recorded. What happens if somebody is ill? What happens if they are sort of traveling somewhere? That details, like who is going to substitute them, even that is being recorded. So this is all sort of gives the kind of focus the great king has on the temple and ensure that all these are properly documented and then followed by various officials who have been appointed in the temple as well. That is what actually makes Rajaraja a great king. One more example I just want to point out is the inscription which is there in the back side of the temple, which is called as Rajarajan Vinayakar. Now that Vinayakar Murti is sort of broken due to the invasions of outsiders and not sort of used for regular pujas, etc., because it sort of got broken. But there was that time in Rajaraja's time, that was one of the prominent whom Rajaraja used to pay regularly. That is what it is called as Rajaraja Vinayaka. And there is a fantastic inscription on the side of that. So what it says is, perhaps one day Rajaraja would have visited and then wanted to donate bananas to the Ganpati. And he actually thought there are about 150 bananas per day is the good number to sort of offer to Ganpati. And then he has ordered that what is actually the amount which is required to ensure that the best quality banana was offered to Ganpati. And then based on that calculation, he has arrived at the kind of interest income which is required to offer 150 bananas per day. And then he had also sort of thought through what will be the investment required to earn this interest. And then he has divided that investment into 3 different merchant guilds who are there in the Thanjavur, because he doesn't want to have a risk of putting everything under one person and something happens to that guild. This entire thing gets stopped. So he had that foresight of distributing or hedging, what we call it now, to 3 different merchant guilds, and then ensure that this particular thing is sustained over a period of time. And then the interest income, how much investment each of the merchant guilds need to make to do that. And then what is the quality of banana which we need to buy and then offer to the Ganapati. That's what is being inscribed. That inscription is again there in the temple even now. We can go and then see that. So with that, there are about such 25 such inscriptions you can see into the temple. One more sort of remarkable idea which this great king has, which is again there in one of these inscriptions, I wanted to point. The temple needs ghee that is required for burning lamps across multiple shrines. So how do we ensure that the ghee is supplied to the temple regularly? So he thought about that and then announced a scheme. So he said that is called as a Sava Muva Peradu scheme, right? So if it is going to be a goat, 96 goats constitute a lot, 48 cows constitute a lot, and then 16 buffaloes constitute a lot. So he has divided that goat, buffalo, how much will be there in each of the lot. And these are donated to as lots to various shepherds who are living in the nearby places. 2 lots of goats, 2 lots of cows, etc. And that is free. And what those shepherds need to do is to give back X amount of ghee to the temple based on whatever proportion of the lots of goats or cows or buffaloes they have got to the temple. And that need to be perpetual. There shouldn't be any break. If there are breaks in supplying ghee to the temple, then there will be inquiries and then there will be confiscation of cows or buffaloes which are given to these shepherds. So that are all written in an agreement and it is being given. And whatever they can do with the rest of the income what they generate using these goats or cows, it is up to those shepherds. There is absolutely no questions asked. But what they have to do is to donate this amount of ghee to the temple for burning of these perpetual lamps. So that is what the condition is. And that generated a lot of employment because a lot of shepherds came to avail this particular scheme. And then they made a lot of money out of it because there are various ways of generating income. And they also ensured that the ghee is donated to the temple as per the terms and conditions. So that is one of the phenomenal scheme. Though this was there in the earlier Chola king's period or Pandya's period as well, Rajaraja is the one who actually made this as a very grand scheme. So that way, this was a phenomenal success, which has been followed by a number of other kings following Rajaraja's time. So that is another thing which is worth mentioning of what all he has done to ensure that all the aspects, the daily function of the temple, the operations of the temple are sort of continued. So even now we can see that the temple is a living temple which is being prayed by a number of people. not all the donations, whatever made by the great king, is still available, but I'm sure that there is a considerable portion of it is still there with the temple.
Some of the information which you have shared. I also wanted to point out some of the myths associated with the temple, because I see a lot of information going around saying that this has happened, that has happened. Let us look at some of those myths. First and foremost, there is a myth saying that the shadow of the great Shivamana never falls down, which is in fact is untrue. The shadow does fall down. There's nothing which is great about that. So you can see that is very well photographed. The other thing is there was a painting inside the Sandara where you will see a person with beard and another clean shaven person, and then they were saying that this is Rajaraja and his Guru Karuvurthevar, which is also not true. There was no evidence that Karuvurthevar existed during Rajaraja's time. In fact, he lived during his son Rajendra's time, but he sang in praise of the Thanjavur Brihadeeswara. But that doesn't mean that they were there during the construction of the temple, and a lot of myths surrounding that as well. Rajaraja's guru was Isana Sivacharya, which is very clearly documented in the inscription, and not Karuvurthevar. And there is no evidence whatsoever saying that the ones in the picture are Karuvurthevar. In fact, you will see a mural which is there in the Sandara where Rajaraja and his queens are doing darshan of Sri Nadaraja. So you will see Rajaraja's picture with the beard and the tuft, etc. So that was totally different from the other picture. So that was another thing which is not correct. And the biggest of the myth is that the shikara is of single stone, which is 80 tons. And then it was taken from a place called as Sarapallam all the way up by putting a slope, which is absolutely not true. It was not a single stone. It was made up of a number of stones which are joined together like an orange peel. You will see they were all together, right? So similarly, number of stones were joined with line paste, but that was a fantastic construction, no doubt. But that was not a single stone. And it was again, there were some stories going around that one day Rajaraja got a dream where Shiva appeared on his dream saying that I am happy to be under the shadow of a donation from an old lady. So he was worried. I built a big temple. Why he is saying under the shadow of an old lady? He runs around and then finds that the single stone was taken from a person called as Aragi, who was an old lady, which is why Siva said all these things. Absolutely untrue. There was no Aragi, nothing like that. I think what we can do least is not to demean this great king by attributing such a great construction where he was magnanimous to contribute, means take everything along to such stories. He called himself as Sivapatha Sekharan, who wanted to fall at the feet of Shiva. Here you see a picture of Rajaraja where he has the Padhukas of Lord Shiva on the top of it. That is how he wanted to be called. So he had a number of names, but Sivapatha Sekharan is the name where he wanted to call himself. Such a great Shiva devotee he is. There are other stories which are associated him with Tanjavur. Nothing of this is true. He lived a great life, ruled a big country, and built such a great temple which stands thousands of years, to his denoting his devotion to Lord Shiva even now. And all we have to sort of only take pride in such a great temple exists till now. Then we are going to take patronage of it and then carry forward to the generations to come. So with that, I'll conclude. I will again meet with you with another great temple of Cholas in the next series. Thank you very much.